Welcome, everyone. My name is Keith Nykum, and I'm going to be giving a presentation over the financial crisis of 2008. This crisis was the largest global financial crisis since the Great Depression in 1933, and some of the casualties in the businesses of the United States included the entire investment banking industry, the largest insurance company, and two enterprise chartered companies, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Also, a couple more is the largest mortgage lender, the largest savings and loan, and two of the largest commercial banks. A couple things that caused the crisis varied from banks, automotive industry, financial institutions, and a few others that created this terrible downfall. A key point that was a big factor in it was the unemployment. Back in 2008, the unemployment was above 9% and still was above 10.2% in October of 2009. Next part we're going to get into is the banks. Banks and realtors were not cautious of the creditors that they were giving loans and mortgages to, so therefore this later caused a large amount of people not making payments. The reason for this was banks were trying to accept loans and mortgages left and right to maximize their profit because the mortgage-backed securities were so profitable at the time. And once people started losing their jobs from unemployment, they were defaulting on their payments, therefore making a huge supply of homes in the market. With the large surplus of homes, the price of homes then dropped nearly 30%. And this caused a panic throughout the country with everyone that was affected. The next big cause was financial institutions. The first financial institution that actually went under was Countrywide Financial Company. And throughout the entire market, all shares plummeted because of everyone wanted to try and get rid of it, so your demand was low and your supply was high. So for instance, Dow Jones was down 30%, and it caused everyone's portfolios to be losing all kinds of money, and everyone losing their retirement. And then another reason was all these financial rating companies were giving false ratings, or the ratings were wrong. Next section I'm going to talk about is the reason the automotive industry had to take into a crisis. The American automotive industry, which planned for a bailout, found itself on the edge of bankruptcy. But at this time, nearly all the banks were frozen and weren't trusting anyone to pay them back. They simply stopped making loans, and then caused most businesses that needed that cash to regulate their business and needed that loan for the day-to-day functions of the business, therefore had to close down. With large amounts of loans frozen, nobody was buying cars because they simply could not get loans. This also caused all these huge car industries to have high amounts of inventory with very little current assets, such as cash and current liabilities. And the biggest example was General Motors and their government bailout. The next thing I'm going to talk about is actually the government's programs to the response of this crisis. The Housing and Economic Recovery Act was passed in July of 2008. And it allowed homeowners to keep their homes in order to reduce the excess supply of homes in the market. Therefore, all the home values weren't dropping 30-40%. The next is the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008, also known as the Bailout Act. And this enabled the Treasury to inject $700 billion into the financial system and in order to improve liquidity. Now I'm going to kind of get into viewpoints. So here we go. There were a couple theories that made the U.S. economy crumble so quickly. Um, One was it held the issuers of subprime mortgages ultimately responsible for a crisis. When the mortgage-backed securities were highly profitable, mortgage companies were eager to lend to anyone regardless of the borrower's financial condition. So with this said, they were taking higher risk and wanting greater returns, but yet they knew that the government would bail them out. So as we watched in some of the lectures in chapter 15, we learned that in 2010 they started making acts and laws to where the executives could not make risky decisions so that they could become more profitable and make more in their bonuses. The next one is a large amount of borrowers cannot be trusted, and it made it difficult for loans to go through. In fact, most loans were froze, causing some of the businesses that depended on these to get closed down for day-to-day operations and also causing unemployment. With this said, this created a large domino effect. And the final point I have is, while banks could not give loans, there was a few options. Banks could go under, causing a higher effect and may cause another Great Depression. And with that said, the economy would wait for it to correct itself. Since most of the companies were in so much trouble, where the ones making risky decisions were ones facing the consequences. This is more a conservative side. They feel like the companies that did these decisions should suffer. But on the other side of it, it's a more social idea, which is what actually happened, is the government should just inject a bunch of money to try and bail these guys out and help them. And the reality was they dumped $7 billion into the economy, and this actually gave the government two stocks in 206 banks in 2008. And in 2009, when Obama took office, his administration put together a $1 trillion plan to help with tax cuts and spending to stimulate economic growth. Now, the issue with this was that $1 trillion may have been more so wasted because it went into unemployment, things like that, which I'm sure we've all argued about. So my total view of this is I think most companies that were given a bailout, like General Motors, that were already running these huge deficits in their budget, and they knew they were too big to fail, they should have been the ones that suffered and went bankrupt and had to pay all the fines. Whereas companies that were needed in the economy, like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, if we want to bail them out, there would have been a whole lot larger of a domino effect within the recession. Alright guys, that sums up my video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a great day.